What's up, guys? Tim Little, Matt Allen. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. You know, there's been several videos floating around YouTube lately about the Senko, the 5 ways to rig a Senko. And honestly, there's a lot more ways to rig a Senko, and that's what we want to talk to you guys about today. You know, the stick bait or the Yamamoto Senko is one of the most versatile baits on the market. I mean, they're fish catchers from the West Coast all the way across the East Coast. They are a must-have in your tackle box. So today, Matt and I are going to go through 15 ways to rig a Senko. Some of you guys have seen, some I'm sure you haven't seen. So let's get started. What do you got?
All right, I'm gonna kick it off. You know, this applies whether you're throwing a 4-inch Senko at a smallmouth or a 7-inch Senko for a giant bass in a swamp somewhere. These tricks work for everything. Every single one of these is a fish catcher. They're all very different. So the first way, if you want to give it a different look, if everybody around you is throwing a Senko, grab a pair of scissors, take the back of the Senko, we're going to split it both directions into 4 separate tails. Now, once you've done this, you can apply it to a lot of your different rigging options, right? You can Texas rig that, you could run it on what? The
Wacky.
Shaky Head, the ball head, the Wacky, it doesn't matter. It's just a different look. You're still getting, for the most part, that same fall, but that tail is going to play it a little bit differently. You're going to get some different motion out of that Senko that when everybody else is throwing a Senko, those fish just are not seeing.
So now that he's covered one you've probably never seen before, I'm going to cover one that you've probably seen the most of. I'm going to do the basic Texas rig. You're going to use your favorite worm hook, offset worm hook, wide gap. You could use a super line if you want a little bit heavier, faster fall. Real quick, we've shot a video about this in the past, maybe a year or two ago, but there is a right way to rig a Senko. So when you look at a Senko or a stick bait out of the package, if you spin it and you hold it up, you'll see that there's one side that has a bow to it. That is the bow that you want facing down. That way, when it's falling, it cups more and it has more action. So there is a right way for all these to rig a Senko.
That's true.
But, so yeah, just go right in the face, go in 1/8 of an inch or so, pull it through, and then you're gonna turn it on to itself right there, and then you're gonna skin hook it back in. So now you can skip docks with this. You can throw this up into your grass, your tulies, anywhere that you fish a worm. You can fish it weedless, and that is the Texas Rig Cinco.
Can I borrow that one?
Yeah.
Again, you guys want a different look. Another option for you is you take a screw-in blade, put it right into the tail of that bait. Once that's in there, completely different look for that Senko. Adds flash, and they make different blades, different sizes, but it's gonna add flash to that bait. It's gonna add some movement to that bait. Completely different look. And when you're reeling it back to the boat, you've got that thump. If you've got murky conditions, it's a great way for those fish to find that Senko from a little bit farther out with that blade on the back of it.
All right, next up is gonna be the Wacky Rig Cinco. You know, there's kind of a new trend on the market right now talking about O-rings and saddles, like harnesses for your Wacky Rig. Typically, I use a little Wacky Rig tool. You put your O-rings on there, you slide it onto the bait, you slide your O-ring off, right? And then you hook through the O-ring. Well, traditionally, when you hook through an O-ring, sorry, I already got this one rigged up. Let me just grab a different hook. When you hook through the O-ring, your bait's gonna be sitting like that, right? You set the hook, the bait comes off, but when you're fishing it, it's gonna be sitting like that. With this harness, now it holds the bait like this. See how it holds it instead of perpendicular, it holds it, right? Or
perpendicular or
yeah.
I don't know.
Either way,
it turns the hook the
it
other
turns
way.
the hook the opposite direction. You're still getting the same, you know, when you hook the fish, you're not going through as many baits because you're not hooking the hook through the bait itself. You're hooking it through the harness, through the O-ring, and the bait slides up the line, and you could use it more than on one fish.
Yeah. Let me jack that from you.
Yeah.
Next one, we're gonna do the same thing. You wanna change your look, you're throwing that wacky rig, whether you're throwing that with a traditional O-ring with the hook turned sideways or with a saddle style O-ring where you're hooking through and you're not paralleling anymore, you're perpendicular. You take that screw in blade again and you screw it in right under that hook. And you've got yourself a very, very different look on the fall. Murky water especially, you're getting more vibration out of the bait. They're feeling it from farther away. But even in clear water, if you're in a place where a lot of people are throwing that Senko, it's a different look.
To add on to that, you could also put 2 blades on the side. I've seen that done. I've seen that work too. Put the 2 blades out here, and now you have 2 blades falling down. Yeah. The next rig that I'm going to talk about is the weighted wacky rig, the flick shake. So what this is your typical wacky rig hook with weight on it. Hope you guys can see that. And the weights vary. We'll put links down the description with different products. But typically what you do, I like to figure out which color I want up, and then I will run it right through. And then boom, what you have now, depending on the weight, you have another wacky rig that's gonna fall a little bit faster. This is gonna have good bottom contact. You get more feel with the weight being there, and that
sometimes
is another
it'll really change that flutter on the way down too, because you're pulling it faster.
Right. Yeah, that's a great fish catcher right there.
Next one for you. This is for you clear water guys, you light line guys. You're fishing those fisheries where they see you coming from a country mile. I never see anybody do this, and it's something that I do all the time. If those fish are line shy, you get a tiny hook. I'm going with a drop shot hook here. It's a Trocar drop shot hook. Instead of rigging the bait traditionally, I'm going to thread up the line. Now, obviously there's no line on this one, but I'm gonna go right in the very tip center of the bait, and I'm just gonna start pushing that bait up. And I'm going to push it far beyond the actual end of the hook, so that the hook ends up way up inside the bait. Now, why do I do that? It's the best way to have minimal hook exposure. I don't have a great big Texas rig hook dangling out here. It's just the bend and the point. That's it. And because it is an exposed point, I can go lighter line. So even though I'm throwing a 5 or a 6 or a 7-inch Senko, you can go down to 2, 4, 6 pound line, depending on how big of a bait you're throwing, and you can get those line shy fish to bite when they wouldn't otherwise want to bite.
So that's good advice. All right, next one up is going to be the Shaky Head. This one actually is made by Dirty Jigs. This has a screw lock into it. Again, I'm gonna take that Senko and I'm gonna spin it around. I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna see which way that has a little bend to it. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna screw it right onto the head. I want that bend facing down, like I said before. So you want to check it once you get it on the head. Make sure that that bend is still correct. And you're going to rig it right back into itself. The benefit of throwing it on the Shaky Head, you get that faster fall. You can fish deeper water faster, more quickly. But you have a lot more bottom contact. Again, you're getting the feel off the head. And it's just a bigger profile. You could use a different worm, but the Senko just has that bigger profile, and it typically gets bigger bites.
Mm-hmm. Along those same lines, the bare ball head. Before the Nico rig happened, or before anybody was talking about it, there were a lot of us throwing a ball head Senko. Now you're not getting that vertical position that you get out of that Nico rig. I don't know what it is about this bait. We've talked to you about it for years. It's been in quite a few of our videos, actually, when we're talking finesse fishing with you. But if you're on a worm bite and you're catching plenty of fish and you need a bigger fish, that 5-inch ball head Senko, you just thread right on, pop that ball right out the side there. So we've got great hook exposure. It is a do-nothing, dead action bait.
Cold water bait.
Cold water bait. And it flat gets them.
Yeah, it's not like a darter head. It's just that do-nothing bait. Like he said, it's a fish killer. Great bait for those cold water months. You mentioned the Nico rig. I'm gonna jump over to the Nico rig. A nail weighted Senko. You guys have heard that term before. What we're doing, we're using a tungsten weight that goes into the fat side of the Senko, not the skinny side. Again, you're gonna wanna make sure that you rig this so the cup is facing down, like I said. But an O-ring, slide an O-ring up. You're gonna take your favorite drop shot hook or mosquito hook, something like that. And where I see a lot of people mess up on, like when they wacky rig it, right? They wacky rig it right in the middle of the bait. They want to fold it in half. But what I like to do when I'm Nico rigging is actually move that O-ring down to the bottom inch and a half of the bait, where the weight on the weight side. And what I think, you know, I could be completely wrong, but I think what is happening is it gives that bait kind of that, it's on the bottom feeding type of action. You know, you got the heavy head down here, and I just have had better luck rigging it closer to the weight than in the middle of the bait.
All right, next one for you. We're going back to that Texas rig, the weighted Texas rig. You have to talk about it. Why does it work? I don't have any idea why it works, but man, it flat works. We don't peg that weight. You take a small weight, 1/4 ounce or less, slide it up the line, tie your bait on. It's unpegged, it can slide, but it's gonna speed up the fall rate. It's gonna get that bait down there. It's gonna give you a little bit better bottom contact when you're fishing around cover, so you don't kind of lose it in the cover. You've got good connection to the bait and you feel those bites well. That weighted Texas rig gets them.
I got 2 left. I'm gonna do 2 easy ones. I'm gonna do your basic Carolina rig. You know, your tungsten weight with a 18-inch to 4-foot leader to fluorocarbon leader, and just a Texas rig Senko. So just a Texas rig Senko. So you get that weight of the Carolina rig out there, but then you get the action of a weightless Senko falling. That is a killer. And then the drop shot. One thing I will say with the drop shot, I get more bites fishing the Senko wacky rig. So a traditional drop shot, use your favorite drop shot hook, but just wacky rig the Senko. Throw on one of those harnesses if you can, if you want to save baits. And those are my favorite ways to rig a Senko.
Couple more for you. Going old school, the split shot. Pre-Carolina rig. Well, not even pre-Carolina rig. It was going on at the same time. It was just a West Coast thing.
It's a
finesse Carolina rig. Little tiny split shot, crimped on the line, 1 foot or 2 ahead of that Senko on a really light wire hook, so that it's not just digging bottom, so it can bounce off those rocks, flop around, have some extra movement. Really light wire hook. It gets them. It's one that I've gotten away from. I haven't split shotted in years, but man, it does work, especially on those finesse fisheries. And last but not least, definitely the strangest of the bunch, is gonna be that Wacky Rig Jig. It's a thing. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a joke. Who on earth is gonna put a Senko on the back of a pitching jig? But it works. If you are fishing deep cover, if you're fishing vertical cover, trees, dock pilings, bridge pilings, and you wanna slow your fall, nothing will slow that jig down like having that Wacky Rig Cinco dragging behind it, and it gets bit. Very different look, very different approach, but it works, and it's not something those fish see every day.
One thing I'd like to throw in is all these Senkos that we've shown you are the 5-inch Senko. There's awesome colors to choose from. They do some custom lines, but they have Senkos from 3-inch all the way up to 7-inch that they make. So don't be afraid to try these applications on smaller versions and larger versions.
And the larger versions, absolutely. Guys, 15 different ways to rig a Senko. Some of them are ways you know well. Some of them are ways you may have never seen. All of them are effective. The Senko, hands down the most universal bait in bass fishing. If you're not throwing it, you need to. We'll give you links to all those different ways, all that gear down in the video description like always. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.